Hey there. Hi, everybody on Facebook and on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me here at The Magical Solution. My name is Leilani. I am so excited once again for tonight. So, we have tonight a very dear friend, and I'm so excited. This is take 2. We are definitely going to do this here tonight for you guys. This subject is on Muerterismo, right? So it's the Latin form of working with the dead, right? And we are going to go in tonight talking about all kinds of wonderful topics within this subject. So I'm really excited for you guys. So first, before we bring him in, let's read his bio. So Muertero Yamil has been involved on his spiritual journey since a very young age. Growing up in Miami, Florida, in the town of Little Havana, he was exposed and initiated into spiritual systems like Espiritismo, Palo Mayombe, and Latin American folk magic. Always hearing about Muerteros from an early age, his curiosity led him to start investigating and to learn more from them. And so on his travels, his journey led him to learn from different Muerteros from different countries like Cuba, Mexico, Guatemala, South America. So listen, you guys, we are not messing with someone who's just interested in Muertero. We are talking to someone who has learned from the best of the best from all over South America. And I'm so excited to bring him on tonight, for you guys to pick his brain, for you guys to, get to know his in and outs, and for us to just hang out with him for an hour. Like, why not, right? So let's do it. Let's talk to him. Hey!
Hello, everybody.
How are you tonight?
I'm good.
So we have a couple people on here. We've got Mars, we've got Lauren, we've got Marius, we've got a bunch of people in the chat right now. I'm excited, and more are going to be coming. And I'm psyched about this subject, man. The last time you and I spoke, I swear, like, I wanted to sit with you for hours, like totally disrespecting the amount of time you have for the day.
Not at all.
So first and foremost, I want to thank you so much for saying yes to me tonight for this interview and for coming on tonight. I am so excited for you to be here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So let's get into it. Let's talk about it. So what is Muerterismo? And not only what is it, but is there any correlation to Espiritismo? Because the words kind of sound the same.
Okay. So Muerterismo is basically a form of working with the dead. It's a form of working with spirits in Latin America. There's different forms of Muerterismo depending on the country that you're from. There's other people who are Muerteros, but they call them animeros as well. Muerteros are people who work with guides, work with spirit guides, but also work with dirts and bones from the dead as well.
So animeros, is that have to do with the anima sola, or is that a totally different thing that I'm thinking about?
Well, it is, and at the same time it isn't. There is animeros who do work with the anima sola, but there's animeros who don't. Anima is the root for anima, soul, alma. You know what I'm saying? So when you're working with the animas, you could go to a cemetery and basically work with the animas that are there, the souls that are there. So a muertero kind of goes hand in hand with an animero. It's kind of like the same thing because they both work with the dead. They both study the dead. They both study the death, how that person passed away, and they use those characteristics for their magic or for what they want to obtain or what they want to learn or what they want to accomplish.
I like that you use the word study the dead. That is prime words, and we're going to get back to that for sure. Mm-hmm. But I want to know, does Muerterismo, is that a standalone practice, or is that something that is part of a larger practice, like in the ATRs or in the DTRs or in the Latin American religions that are there? Is that like a part of it, or is it its own standalone practice?
It is and it isn't. That's the thing, depending on the country that you're from, because there's many people who work the ATRs that work Palo Mayombe. that are Muerteros as well, and a lot of that knowledge um, from that particular system kind of goes hand in hand with Muerterismo as well. You also have in the east part of Cuba um, Muerteros as well that kind of work in Muerterismo, but Haitian voodoo style, because that's a very predominant, it's a dominant religion on that side of the island. But Muerterismo is how it was studied, at least in Cuba, that I studied it with the institutions that I studied with when I was over there in Cuba. Muerterismo is and isn't. It can be, but it can't be. Like there's people who work Muerterismo on its own, and then there's people that are initiated in Palo, initiated in different systems, and even studied Espiritismo and work with Muerterismo. And a lot of people may disagree that are hardcore Espiritistas. A lot of Espiritistas will disagree with the practice of Muerterismo. But the thing is that Muerterismo, just like Espiritismo, is the studying and the practice and the experimentation of working with the dead.
Interesting. So, I mean, if you can speak on this, because I know in your bio you said that you also are a part of Espiritismo. What would be the differences then? I mean, if you're looking at it in terms of working with the dead, studying with the dead, I know that there are elements of Espiritismo that are a little bit, what's the right way of saying this? Less darker, if you will.
Yeah.
But if you could kind of like, if you were able to give us like a top 3 list of the differences between the two, what would be like your top 3 differences between Muerterismo and Espiritismo?
Okay, so when we're talking about the difference between Muerterismo and Espiritismo, we have to take into consideration what type of Espiritismo are we talking about. Because we do have different branches of Espiritismo. I can speak on the Cuban aspect of Espiritismo, where we have Espiritismo Científico, which is Allan Kardec, straight from the Centro Espiritual. We have El Cordón Espiritual, and we have Espiritismo Cruzado as well. And then you have other systems as well that get in there, that get incorporated in there as well. The difference is that at least for Espiritismo, like Espiritismo Científico, which is the orthodox way or the first way that it was brought into to Cuba and other parts of the Caribbean, like Puerto Rico as well, right? Muerterismo is pretty much sorcery. You know what I'm saying? It's sorcery. It's working with the dead to accomplish things. Espiritismo evolves the spirit. It gives the spirit light, but it's not. It's really not giving the spirit light. It's also you progressing as well with the spirit, because we have to take into consideration that when we're dealing with spirits, we're dealing with intelligence. If anybody who reads the book of Allan Kardec, when you read the book of the spirits, which is the first book that everybody should be reading if you practice Espiritismo, it says the first question is, what is God? And God, the answer is God is intelligence. Right. So when we're dealing with spirits, we're dealing with intelligence. We're dealing with energy, intelligent energies. Unfortunately, in certain practices, we look at spirits and we still look at them in their human form, which is not. There's nothing wrong with that. But the difference between Muerterismo and Espiritismo, first and foremost, sorcery. Secondly, we Muerteros are not really focused on trying to elevate the spirit. They're trying to really get what they can get in this world and get it through means of working with the dead.
But there's still relationships happening. Like it's not like you're using them or anything like that.
No.
There's still relationships, right?
No, because you cannot work with the dead unless you have permission from that spirit, and that spirit makes a pact with you, and you work with that spirit, and you guys are in a union together. You know, so if that spirit does not want to work with you, then you're wasting your time. You know, and then the other thing is that the third thing that I can say the differences between a Muertero and an Espiritista is that we don't work with anything that has to do with bóvedas, or we don't have misas or reuniones espirituales. So we don't have, at least from what I know, the Espiritismo that I was raised in, from my grandmother and people that taught me in my neighborhood, there is no organization type of situation where on Wednesdays we have study night learning Espiritista and learning the codification.
Right.
And then on Fridays we're gonna get together and we're gonna do reunions. No. Muerteros really in actuality learn with their mentors. It's not a godparent thing. We don't have godparents in those systems. And we have mentors and we have teachers, and there is no initiations in Muerterismo. There is powers given, but there is no initiation, meaning that with each teaching that you learn, there's a power handed to you. At least in the system that I was taught, and in other systems that I live with other people, they'll give you a blessing here and there, but it's not really nothing like that. So, yes, there is that whole thing of developing with the spirit because you have to create a bond. Like in Espiritismo, you have a desarrollo espiritual.
Mm-hmm.
You have to develop with the spirit. You have to also develop your incarnated spirit as well, right? Because you have to get to know your true self. Who
Right.
are you through the spirits of light and through God? And in the Muerterismo aspect, you're just creating a bond with the spirit. You're trying to get to know his likes and her likes or his dislikes. You know, you're trying to create a partnership. It's like a relationship. It's like getting to know me, getting to know you.
Right.
I want to know what your kinks are. I want to know what gets you mad. I want to know what makes you happy. I want to know what can motivate you so that me and you can work together to accomplish the same goal.
Interesting. So when you, and I'm probably not allowed to ask this question, so you can tell me to screw off if you need to, but like when you were mentioning the master to student relationship, the idea of a power being bestowed upon you depending on the lessons, is that power being bestowed from the teacher? Is that power being bestowed from the dead themselves? Or is that power something that gets pulled out from within you because of the teaching?
It can be all three of them. In all actuality, it can be because, like for example, when I was starting, right, um, I would have like some type of like issue with one of my spirits. Okay, I come from one system where in that system, everything is you learn with your godparent. It's like that. You have it like that. But when you're working with a spirit by itself, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes this spirit is acting in a way where you're not really it pacted with you. It wants to work with you, but that spirit has its own personality.
Right.
So probably I'm not, like any relationship, you really don't know, like, okay, what am I dealing with here? What type of human being is this? Or what type of characteristic or intelligence this person has?
Right.
This person could be slicker than me, you know? So the teacher tells you, listen, when this type of thing happens, this is what you do to the spirit. You put this plant on the spirit, or you do this ceremony to the spirit, or you tame the spirit or submit the spirit to do this. It's not punishment, but sometimes you do have to punish them. And that's the thing, like, this is a system that is not for people who are into, I'm not gonna say like, light type of systems and I'm evolving and I want to become like this enlightened being. Yes, there is systems like that, like Espiritismo does help with that, and that can lead you to other philosophies. Muerterismo is not like that. Muerterismo is
it sounds like you're putting them through tests to make sure, like, are you who you saying that you are, or are you like this, and what is this, and like it almost sounds like you're putting them through tests. And I feel you on that. I really feel you in terms of like this system not being for the faint of heart. Like it definitely sounds like you're getting in the dirt, you're getting down and dirty, and you kind of have to have a sense of self.
Yes, you do.
I can definitely just based on the little bit that you're talking about right now, just that little bit, I can definitely see someone who does not know themselves getting lost really quick, or taken advantage of very quickly, or whatever the case. So let me ask you then, what are some protective measures, or what are some examples of testing a spirit when you're out there and you're new and you're still trying to figure things out, and you come across your first spirit? What's a simple something that you're allowed to give away regarding testing or protecting yourself?
Well, Protecting yourself would be to pay attention and to be aware of your surroundings. So, like I said, it depends on the system that you're working with, and it depends on the type of spirit that you're working with. Because some muerteros don't work with human bones or with spirits from the graveyard. Some muerteros work with guides that have nothing to do with the actual physical object of the dead. You understand me? I do. I work with both. And that's the thing that people don't understand. There is no regla like in the ATRs, like the regla de ocha, la regla de palo, la regla this, and the regla of that. Muerterismo is very, it's like Latin American, it's like an occultism, but in Latin America where you are learning and you're learning and you're learning, but at the same time you're choosing your path. Because a muertero could even work with a deity that can teach him necromancy. You understand me? You could work with a spirit that could teach him necromancy. And I have that as well. You know? So when we're dealing with when we're dealing with those types of spirits, a protection would be first and foremost, you have to be aware, you have to be grounded. You have to be an individual that has to be grounded. So you have to do things like meditations, not saying like Eastern style of meditations, but like, grounding yourself, meditating, doing prayers, doing a lot of visualizations, a lot of things like that. Protecting yourself, knowing that you're dealing with a spirit where in the beginning it's going to be rough with the spirit. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it isn't. But one of the things that at least that my teachers taught me was he always taught, like I had two teachers. One of them worked directly with the bones and one of them didn't. He went through a guide. You understand me? He went through a guide that would teach him about how to work with the dead. You understand me? So I kind of learned on both aspects. You know what I'm saying? So me personally, I work with a particular guide. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing. I went through Espiritismo. So Espiritismo like opened my spirituality for me to make it easier for me to have contact with spirits, right, whether they're on the physical or a guide form. You know what I'm saying? Right. So for lack of better words, you know what I'm saying? So first and foremost, you have to know who you are. You have to be grounded. You have to be very aware of your surroundings. Secondly, you have to always clear your space. You have to always clear the area that you're working with. When you're working with a spirit, you have to clear the space, because if you're working with particular guides or particular wounds, those types of spirits can call those types of ceremonies and things like that can call trickster spirits to come in as well. You understand me? Now, there's things that I can't reveal, because when you're working with like bones and things like that, there's ceremonies that you have to put those spirits through, rituals.
Of course.
So that I can't reveal too much about that. But if you don't have a teacher to teach you how to do things like that, and you're just working with spirits of the grave, and you're just grabbing dirt, and you're like, all right, let me just start doing this and let me start doing that, you're gonna call a trickster spirit. And if you're not grounded and you are not taught the basics of it, something can happen to you. Something will happen to you. Something can happen to your loved ones if you have a family.
So this really isn't for like the solitary practitioner just kind of winging it with, cemetery spirits or graveyard spirits, and just it's really not. Like you should look for a teacher. Although there's no initiation, there some guidance would be helpful in this situation, just because it's so dangerous.
Yeah, it is, but like we have, like I said, we have people from different communities, from different practices that, like I said, that their spirituality is very, very enhanced. It's very, it's very developed, and they work with certain guides, or they work with certain energies or deities. And these deities also can become their teacher. You understand me? Because that's the thing. Like you could work with, let's say, like me, I have spirits that are in physical form, right? And I'll go to a spirit that is a very good spirit when it comes to necromancy, when it comes to working with the spirits of the cemetery or working with the spirits of the dead. That spirit can tell me, hey, listen, that spirit right there is not acting in a correct manner. You need to do this, 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 or put a sigil under this spirit and do this and light the candles and do this, and then try to see what you can do to work him to get him to fall in line or get her to fall in line. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, we have a question here, and I'm actually curious myself. So this one's from Mars Cosmos. He wants to know, can a Muertero work with Santa Muerte? Are they considered Santa Muerte devotees, or is that a whole different thing? Like, can they incorporate that into the system?
I'm gonna be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
A Muertero can be a devotee of the Santa Muerte, but the Santa Muerte and practicing lo que es Muerterismo or working what is Muerterismo are two different things. Those two things are not the same. They're not from the same system. They're not from the same thing. Now, some people might disagree with me. Some people might disagree with me with what I'm gonna say, but I don't care. I've had, because one of my guides is the Santa Muerte, as you see her back there. You understand me? She's taught me certain things, and she's told me to do certain things when a certain spirit doesn't fall in line. Well, she's not telling me how to work with the spirit or doing this, and that with the spirit, but she's telling me, hey, be careful because this spirit can come with this type of energy or bring this type of energy, or this spirit is coming aggressive. You need to cool it down, you know? So yes, she is a guide, but those two systems are different systems because Muerterismo has been involved in different countries. I'm not saying because I know the Santa Muerte cult or spiritual path has been here for a very long time, but there's Muerteros who don't work with the Santa Muerte at all. They don't even know about her. You know, so those are two different systems. They've both been around for a while, but they're two different systems.
So you mentioned when you were speaking, this term necromancy came up. Is this considered like a Latinx form of necromancy, or are they two different? Should we not even go there?
No, it is a type of form of necromancy, but we have to take into consideration that when we're working Latin American type of sorcery or folk magic, that we have our own style of doing things. You know, we have our own style of doing things. We're not. I'm not gonna say that many practitioners are not very ritualistic, where they'll start drawing the circle and they'll start doing this and start doing all these invocations. We have our own style of doing things, and our own style of doing things is very unique to us. Where yeah, you know, Latin Americans can understand it because it doesn't matter from what part of Latin America you're from. We have a way of approaching spirits that's completely different from other people. You know, even Africans from Africa, even people that are from this country who are either, you know, European descent or whatever the case may be. But we have our own way of approaching things. We have our own style of working things. We work things in a different manner.
Interesting. So, you had also mentioned before this idea, almost like a twofold path within Muerterismo, which is this idea of like working the bones, working the dirt, working the grave, and then working with spirits, and that you do both. What does that look like? So you explained working with the spirits, and you explained having them be guides and helping you out. With working with the actual physical stuff, like the bones, the graveyard, and all that, what does that look like in comparison to the other one that you were explaining?
Okay, so like I said again, we have different styles of Muerterismo, right? Some of them work with particular guides. Some of them don't even work with bones like I do or like other people. Understand me? A Muertero, at least how I was taught, works with nature. A Muertero works with nature. A Muertero works with dirt. A Muertero works with plants. A Muertero works with anything that he can get or she can get their hands on and turn this simple cup of water into a spirit. You know, that's the thing about Muerterismo. Muerterismo turns things, one thing into another. That's magic. So in order for me to, like, let's say you have a rose, and every day you see this rose bush, and every day you admire this rose bush. But once you get that rose, and you do certain incantations, certain prayers, certain recitations, and things like that, that turns into something else. You know. So when we get certain plants, when we get certain dirt, when we get certain animals, that's another thing. We work with animals as well. Those things now become something else. You know. So we could get one thing, turn it into another, which is just basic magic. A lot of people just do that.
Right.
In the many systems, but we don't. We could get anything, turn it into something, and um reach our goal. What it is, what we want. Like, for example, you have made a post about it earlier. I think it was about I think it was learning the alchemy, or something like
Yeah.
that. About, yeah. So that's what it is. We do the same thing too. Muerteros go, they get their spirit. Like me, I'll get my spirit. I put the ingredients in front of the spirit, and I let him know, hey, listen, this is what I want. This plant represents this. This is to do this because this needs to happen. This animal's for this. I want the gifts and the characteristics of this animal because this animal is good for this. I want, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to ask this question only because I know it's going to come up, right? There is a stereotype. Let's just call a spade, right? When people think of muerteros or necromancers, they think of like that old man that goes in the graveyard, just be digging up dead bodies and, trying to animate dead bodies and doing all this stuff. So to sort of lay to rest the stereotype, or to at least, speak on that stereotype, are there any truths or any myths regarding that you can speak on? Is that true? Do you go into graveyards and, dig up dead bodies, or is that disrespectful, or what does that look like, if at all, in your practice?
In Latin America, we have to, okay, before I start anything, we have to make one thing clear.
Okay.
Just because somebody that does not understand our culture, it rubs them off the wrong way. It is our culture. That is our culture. You have no stance in criticizing, judging, or saying that is wrong. Secondly, if a spirit agrees to work with me, I'm going to work with him. This world or this life is hard as it is. And if I can get my shortcuts and I can do the work that was passed down from my ancestors from generation to generation, whether they were African, Taino, Mexica, whatever it is, whatever you believe in or wherever you're from, if your ancestors worked that type of magic and that's what they did, then that's what they did. Nobody in this world cannot stand and say, oh, that's wrong to be messing with the dead. I don't give a crap who you are. Okay? Third of all, yes, we do. We do dig up bones. Yes, we do. Now, at one point in time, it was something that could have been done here, especially, I'm in the north now, but in the south, it was something that could have been done. But in Latin America, yes, it is a practice that is still practiced. It is something that is still done. And animeros do it all over Latin America, from north to south. You know what I'm saying? It's done. In Latin America, it's much easier than the United States. It's more accepted because it's culture in certain areas. So when you have a client and the client says, or the patient, how they call them, you know what I'm saying? When the patient comes and the patient says, hey, listen, I need help because I'm being afflicted by a spirit. No problem. You'll go to the Muertero, and the Muertero has his buddies set up right there, you know, and his buddies are gonna come and they're gonna help the patient with the problem that they're looking for, or the question that they need an answer to. It's our form of spirituality.
Ah,
That's it.
I
There's
love
no other
it.
way around it.
I love it. Yes. Fucking yes. That's all I have to say. Yes. There's nothing else to say about that. So to kind of step with that, this idea of people coming to Muerteros for help, right? So what are some things that you can use the dead for in your work? Like, are they used for healing? Are they used for cursing? Are they like, what are some of the things that you can use them for in
For
your
everything. For everything. There's nothing that you cannot use them for. Like, there's spirits that I'll go that I knew that there were amazing surgeons or amazing doctors. And if my patient has cancer or has some type of illness that is afflicting them, then I'm gonna go to this spirit and I'm gonna tell this spirit to teach me how to help this person in a spiritual manner, build a talisman with them, or do something so that the person can receive healing. If the person um needs let's say uh is having court problems, right? I'm
Mhm.
gonna go to a particular spirit for that as well. I'm gonna go to a spirit that is good with the law, or spirit, somebody who represented authority, somebody who did something in in that type of manner, so that I can help this individual achieve what they want to achieve. You know what I'm saying? We don't discriminate, because to us, this whole concept of good and bad, yeah, and me personally, I just don't see, in my personal practice, I don't see the difference of either or. You know,
Yeah.
there's certain things, of course, that there's things, of course, that you can't accept that are intolerable. You know what I'm saying? That you cannot just because and not in a sense of morals that we were indoctrinated with through Christian type of views, but just humanity. It's just incorrect. I want to do certain things. But if a person's telling me, hey, listen, I need help with money, I need help with this, or even building a business, which is something that I really push for, especially within our community, that if we can use the teachings of our ancestors and use those types of methods to achieve more economy, more prosperity, more abundance, even self-confidence. You know, because that's one of the biggest things that we have to deal with is confidence within ourselves. In order for us to progress in this world, we need confidence. We need to have a belief, a belief of that we are the shit. You know, we're gonna deal with a spirit that we're gonna work with him, and that spirit is gonna tell you, hey, listen, I don't like that you're like this. So let's go, because you
Crack
have
the
like
whip.
we go back to the beginning what we were talking about. These spirits are intelligences. They have an intelligence, and if you're not up to par with this spirit's intelligence, the spirit is not going to work with you, or the spirit is not going to work in the way that you want him to work or want her to work. You know, because you're not ready yet. You're not ready. Your mind is not there yet.
Right.
You know, and that's the thing. When we're working with the spirit of the dead, when we're working with the spirits, because the spirit of the dead, to me, they're not really dead, but hey, it is what it is. You know, they're more alive than we are. You know,
Right.
um, when we're working with these types of spirits, we have to take into consideration the intelligence that they're walking with, the energy that they're walking with. You have to be ready. You have to be sure that this is what you want, and you have to be ready to be aware of your own surroundings and even your own actions, your own thoughts, and how you communicate. So let's say if you're dealing with a spirit of a person who was a businessman, a billionaire tycoon type of spirit, that when you go to the graveyard, you can tell that this guy was an amazing human being in life. He made a lot of money. He was smart, right? But if you still have a poor mentality, and you're still in that mentality where you don't deserve anything, then you can't work with a spirit like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that spirit is going to get frustrated with you in his world as if he was alive here in ours. He ain't going to want to deal with you. So if this is not what you really want, then don't waste your time.
So I definitely want to get into this idea of studying the
Mm-hmm.
spirits, right? So you had mentioned that when working with these spirits to do certain sorceries and certain things for you, You have to know these spirits. You have to build relationships with these spirits. What does that study look like? I mean, like, do you just like go to their grave, look up somebody's name and say, okay, let me like try and find them in the records of my town or something and try and figure out who they are? Or is there like, or is that more done like on the ethereal meditative plane? Like, what does that study look like?
Both ways. Because a lot of times we are not going, like, especially here in the United States, we're not going to kid ourselves. It's a little bit harder for you to do that, like, because okay, you could look up the spirit in the newspaper and they'll give you the obituary of the spirit and they'll be like, oh yeah, this guy was an amazing human being in life, he did this, he did this, he did that. Okay, that's fine, but you're gonna go to a cemetery and there's like a gajillion people that are already buried. You're gonna start looking for the spirit. How are you gonna do that?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Unless you could go to the office and you ask the person, hey, listen, I'm looking for this particular person, like I've done, and I'd be like, I just want to know where they were buried. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, go to lot G7. He's over there. You could do that. Or you could go to, like what I do many of times, I'll go to a cemetery and I just let them guide me. And then usually, once again, we go back to your development, to the beginning. If you're an individual that you're really developed with spirits and you have good spirit communication, then you're going to have that experience where this spirit is going to be talking to you from their world and they're going to start showing you what they were about. They're going to start teaching you certain things. They're going to start showing you the mistakes that they made, and they're also going to show you what made them successful in whatever area that it is that you want them to work in.
And with that development too, in terms of being able to see, feel, taste, touch, and everything, these energies, you also get that discernment as well. With that development comes discernment to be able to tell which ones are tricky, which ones you shouldn't fuck with, that kind of thing. So it's true. It's true about getting that development in place first. There is a great question here that I just have to ask you. It is by Elba, and it says, she's asking, so he says that there's no reglas earlier. So would it be safe to say that each muertero goes by their own code of ethics, or are there some basic rules everyone follows despite being a practice, not a religion? So across the board, whether you're in Cuba, Mexico, this, that, is it safe to say that you guys follow at least some form of basic ethics, or is it basically every muertero for himself?
Oh, okay, so this individual said no reglas earlier. By reglas, I mean in the Cuban traditions, every tradition is followed by a regla, meaning, this is the regla of this religion. This is the regla of that religion. This is the regla of this path. Basically, even if you practice a regla, whether it's an ATR tradition, ethics is always going to be something that's going to be in place. Because even if you are part of a religion of the ATR, there's many people who practice the religion of the ATR, but in the end of the day, your ethics are your ethics and thus free will. So it doesn't matter if you practice religion or you don't practice religion, that you always have to go by your ethics. But there's a but here. Muerteros all practice differently. This is not like Palo. This is not like Orisha tradition. This is not like other traditions. Muerteros work alone. They don't really work in a group setting or in a community setting. They work alone. They're sorcerers that work on their own. You understand me? But a lot of the times there's a spirit that you're going to be working with, and that spirit is not going to agree with something that you want to expedite or something that you want to send out. You know what I'm saying? Because that spirit sees that two things. I'm not down with that, and it's going to hurt you. It's a tricky question because in the end of the day, yeah, we do have our own ethics, but we don't follow rules. We don't follow rules like your teacher will tell you, hey, listen, this is incorrect, but if you want to do it, go right on ahead.
Right. So speaking of your own personal ethics, I'm curious because you brought up the word free will, right? Mm-hmm. I've heard, and I'm pretty sure it's true, but I've heard that Sometimes muerteros will, trap a spirit in a bottle or trap a spirit in order to utilize them later, or whatever the case may be, right? Basically, just kind of holding on to a spirit, sometimes against the spirit's free will. I'm assuming that is a practice. What is your take on that? And what does that do for the spiritual reputation of you as the muertero?
Okay, so I won't trap a spirit if a spirit doesn't want to come around. I won't trap a spirit unless the spirit comes to my house and wants to mess with me.
Right, protection. Right, it's like self-defense.
I'm not going, because see, the thing about me is that I'm not gonna go to no graveyard and I'm gonna go get a spirit that doesn't want to work with me. That it just, to me, that doesn't make no sense.
Right.
I'm not gonna put myself through that. But if somebody sends a spirit at me and that spirit came into my home or came into my domain, you understand me? And I can't trap that spirit. And I will hold that spirit hostage. And I will punish that spirit. And I will send that spirit right back to you in a very pissed off manner. You know? And that's it. That's pretty much it. But as me going to like working with a spirit and that spirit really doesn't want to work with me, I see that as a waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like, it's just like like you said earlier, it's kind of having relationships with regular people. Like, why would you force a regular person to work with you when they don't want to work with you? A living human being, or if you a relationship, that's like a perfect example. Being in a relationship with someone who does not want to be in a relationship with you, and you're forcing it and forcing it and forcing it. That's a lot of freaking work. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of investment to put into something that may not even bear fruit, because at the chance of crossing you, they probably will.
And the thing is that with Muerteros, there's we go back to the whole ethics thing as well. I've made pacts with spirits that the spirit was down to work with me, right? But I just didn't like the speed that the spirit was working with.
Okay.
It didn't compliment me. It didn't. It didn't. It didn't. It didn't give me that feeling. Bye.
Muévete, muévete. On with the next.
And that's the difference between systems like the ATRs, which there's some people in the ATRs that practice Palo that do go about Palo in that way, because I've seen it with my own eyes.
Right.
And not only that I've seen it with my own eyes, but I've also heard them mention it. You understand me? But in Muerterismo, things can change. We don't have this, oh, this is my altar, and this is gonna be my altar for life, and this thing is just with me. No, that can change. That can change. A Muertero's a Muertero. A Muertero's gonna go anywhere he wants.
Right.
Anywhere in the world that he wants. As long as he has a graveyard, and that's his backyard to go play with, because that's another thing that people don't talk about Muerterismo. Muerteros have their own graveyards. And
okay,
that's
wait a second. You need to speak on that. What?
I do. So, for example, Muerteros are like, okay. A lot of Muerteros, what they do is that they'll move into like a place, like let's say some secluded area in Idaho. You know what I'm saying? And let's say the Muertero goes there. And in a lot of these rural areas, there's little cemeteries in hidden areas, like in forests or in little places like that.
Yeah.
The Muertero will go in there, and he'll make a pact with all of those spirits. And he'll tell those spirits, hey, listen, if you take care of me, I take care of you. And when I drop off some work here, or you handle that for me. So he has like a legion of spirits with him.
All over.
And though he will send those spirits out, because that's the thing. Muerteros, the majority of the time, they're always working in the cemetery. They're always in the cemetery at night. They're always there lighting candles, doing rituals. A lot of them, like the ones that I learned with in my travels, you would think that they would work in their home. No, they have an altar in their home But when it's time to do work, they're doing work in the cemetery, and they got people who are like close to them, and they'll be like, okay, you know what, that are students, right? And everybody's just there sitting on a grave like this, drinking coffee, and the guy's there working, and he's doing all the work right there, you know.
Wow.
But he also has ranks.
Right.
That's the thing that Muerteros do. That they according it's a study. So when you're studying the spirits, you're always gonna put that particular spirit. You're always gonna look for the oldest spirit in that graveyard. You're gonna go to that spirit, and you're gonna start working with that spirit because that's the hierarchy, you know. And in the 21 divisions, or in Haitian voodoo, is the Baron del Cementerio. They'll call it the Baron. But the concept of the Baron to the Muertero is not like the Loa concept that we believe in. The Loa, that is the Baron del Cementerio, you know, the skull with the top hat guy, you know, no. We the Baron del Cementerio to us is like what they say, the first person buried in the cemetery. But to us, it's not a deity or something like that in that type of manner.
He's just
It's
like the OG. He's like the
just
OG
he's the OG, or she is the OG of
of the
that
cemetery.
cemetery that we go to, and we work with that spirit, and then it's a rank. There's a hierarchy there too as well. So your teacher starts teaching you how to work with that type of spirit, and then you start making bonds with the spirit. And if you move, right, if you move, there's ways to take those spirits with you and relocate somewhere else, you know. So the Muerteros gaining spirits of the dead. Once again, I go back, he doesn't have to have the physical object either as well. He could have some dirt. He could even make a bond with that spirit, and that spirit then becomes a guide, incorporates itself in that Muertero spirituality.
Wow, man.
And then that spirit starts guiding that Muertero, and then that spirit then will tell that Muertero, okay, you moved into this other state.
Yeah.
This is how you're going to approach that spirit of that cemetery, of that graveyard. This is how you're going to approach it, and then boom, it happens.
It almost gets easier and easier because they're able to communicate with each other and inform you before you even have to make the first move.
And another thing is that a lot of Muerteros do is that the Muerteros, they create bonds with these spirits. So Muerteros really enjoy spirits that nobody pays attention to.
Right. Right.
So we will go to the cemetery, and we'll start buttering them up. We'll start sweetening them up, and we'll tell them, hey, listen, if you do this for me, when I come back, I'm going to do this for you, and I'm going to clean you up, and I'm going to put nice flowers for you, and I'm going to do all of this.
Speaking of which, what are some basic offerings that you would give to your Muerteros when you're going out there and you're cleaning their grave and you're building relationships with them? What are some like simple offerings that you would give?
The best offering is, to me, is candles. That stands as number one, is candles.
Candles.
Number two, flowers. Number three, you could say food, because you have to understand that Muerteros not only deal with the spirits of the dead, but we also deal with fantasmas, as well. So there's spirits, there's hungry spirits in these graves in these graveyards that are looking to be fed, you know. So we work with those types of spirits as well. Another thing about Muerteros is that, for example, I'll give you one example. I had a client of mine a while back that she had a spirit that was haunting the home all the time, right? This spirit became like a spirit that was like a fantasma type spirit, like a hungry ghost. You understand me?
Yeah.
So the Muertero will channel that spirit. You understand me? And if we feel that the spirit is a spirit that can cause harm to the person, understand me? Then we'll get the spirit, take them out. You understand me?
Mm-hmm.
But we also negotiate with the spirits. That's another thing. The Muertero has to be a good negotiator with spirits. You have to have wits. You understand me? So when you're dealing with these types of spirits, you have to be ready, because these spirits can be like, hey, listen. I don't want you to get rid of me. I just want to be here. But I'm willing to help this family if they do this for me. And I'll do what I can do, and I'll do it to the best of my ability to make sure that I'll have abundance coming into their home, or I'll protect this family from witchcraft. All I need is, once in a while, you could put some offerings to me under a tree here, or do. And that's why I wrote an article about that in my Facebook post, where I said building spirit homes in your backyard. That's something that a lot of Muerteros do, and a lot of people from Latin America do, and even in Asian countries as well. They build spirit homes for these spirits, so you don't disrespect those spirits that have been there, that have probably walked the land way before your house was even built on top of it. You understand me? So you're always honoring these spirits, because we just don't only work with human spirits. We work with other types of spirits. We work with nature spirits as well. You understand me? Yeah. So that's the concept. That's the thing with Muerteros, is like a lot of people say, oh yeah, they're just working with spirits of the dead, and that's it. They just work. No, we work with spirits of animals. We work with spirits of trees. We work with spirits of stones. We work with spirits that are not even human, that were never human at all. So Muertero is a hechicero, but he's also a sorcerer. Like I said again, it's just a practice, which is, every Muertero has his own unique practice.
Yeah.
I know Muerteros that work with deities that I've never heard of in my life. But they're amazing Muerteros. And I know people who work with saints. That's another thing. That people don't talk about. Some of the best Muerteros that have ever existed in this world were Catholic saints.
I think I remember there was a story of Assisi.
San Francisco de Asís.
San Francisco, yes. Would he be considered like a Muertero in a way?
They're gonna cloak him because of the whole Catholic thing that they have to look, But when you really think about it, you see, okay, it's one thing that you're always gonna notice about Catholic saints. Always notice this: when they pray, when you see them in their portraits praying, right? The skull is always looking towards their face and always looking up. You'll see them in a lot of the paintings that they're holding the skull like this.
Yeah.
Like
but it's looking at them.
But it's looking at them, but the majority of the time it's looking up.
Wow.
It's looking up. And a lot of the pictures of San Francisco de Asís, you'll see him, and he's always looking, the skull that he holds is always looking up. And many other Catholic saints worked, or Christian saints worked like that. They always had a relic. And that's something that you see in Tibetan Buddhism, in all different styles of Buddhism, and in tantric practices with the Ogoris as well, that I've learned with many of them like that. I've been around these type of people. I've seen them, how they work like that. And it's a form of Muerterismo, but their form. They're not going to call it Muerteros. They're not going to call it that. But they do work with some form of relic, So...
Wow, that's crazy.
I'm just doing what they do, but mine just doesn't look as fancy as theirs is.
Right. So we have only a few minutes left, and I have like 1,000 more questions to ask you. In some moments, I hate that I only do this for 1 hour, but in other moments, I'm excited because it allows people to want more and to seek you out and to seek out your information so that they can ask you personally. And that's really what my goal is, to kind of give everyone a taste of who you are and what it is that you do. So, my last question for you in these last few minutes would be, if someone wants to become a muertero, what are some of the first steps that they should do? What should they seek out? Who should they seek out? What should they research? What are just some helpful tips that you can give someone who wants to become you?
I think what worked best for me is that I came to these teachers It doesn't matter what system it was, because you have to learn how to be a good student. That I had to learn that the hard way. From years of my experience, I had to learn how to be a good student. And I even practiced how to be a good student. I remember there was this guru. He passed away already, but he was a Tibetan Buddhist guru. Tizam Rinpoche, I think is his name.
Oh, wow.
Um, and I saw him. He came here to the United States, and I went to go see him. And one of the lessons that he gave talks was everybody should learn how to be a good student before approaching the teacher. You have to have patience. This is not something that you could just hurry to become. And the way that I approach my teachers is I never approach them with, what can I get from you? What can I take from you? What can you teach me? When you step in that teacher's zone, in his atmosphere, in his space, class begins. Just because he's not giving you a fancy board over here with markers and he's writing lesson one, lesson two, no. Listen to your teacher. Become friends with your teacher, but respect the teacher. Just, that's how I do it. I guess that's why a lot of people that I've approached, it's very easy for them to teach me, because I taught myself how to become a student. I'm still a student to this day. I'm not some type of guy who knows everything or who knows all the know-all. I'm a student. I'm always going to continue being a student, and being a student stays in my head because you never stop learning.
Right.
Like I don't disregard nobody. There's a saying in Spanish that says, "El más grande aprende del más chiquito, y el más chiquito siempre aprende del más grande." The small one learns from the big one, and the big one always learns from the small one.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter. If you want to be a Muertero, or you want to be anything, if you want to be a Muertero, that's fine. Learn how to be a good student, not only with a teacher that is in human form, but a deity as well.
Yes. Muertero Yamil, tell us how the people can get a hold of you. What are your social media sites? Do you have anything coming up? Is there anything that people should know? Tell us how to reach you.
So you can reach me at Facebook, Muertero Yamil. You can reach me in Instagram, Muertero Yamil. Muertero _ Yamil. Or you could go to my website, which I'm still working on, which is muerteroyamil.com. And that's pretty much it. You can send me a message. You can, like I said, I do readings for people. I give people advice. A lot of people come to me for counseling as well. I have other things that I'm working on, which I'm trying to organize as well, because not only do I like teaching spirituality, but I also like to teach people how to develop confidence as well as a person. Developing confidence, developing loving yourself, and things like that. Because if you're an individual that you want to get into some type of priesthood or some type of spirituality, and you're still you still haven't approached these issues that have been following you for so long, then you're just gonna keep making mistakes, and you're gonna do things like hate spirituality and walk away from things, and then throw things away, and then I can't stand this stuff, and keep digging a hole for yourself.
Yeah. Once again, thank you so much for saying yes to me tonight. This was amazing. I'm mad. I have like 25 more questions on my paper here that I could go into. I was thinking about going into spirits with mental health. I was thinking about, just all kinds of stuff. So who knows? Maybe we should do another live later down the road to get into some more stuff. But thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And to all of you guys who are in the chat, thank you guys for coming. So, that is so awesome. Thank you. You wanted to say something? I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, I just wanted to say Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. And I also wanted to just tell everybody, that in these times right now that we're combating, we're in the Black Lives Matter movement as well, and this is a time for us to go to our ancestors, go to their practices. I don't know what spirit just came right now and started telling me to say these types of things, because I could feel them, like they're even making me get teared up a bit. But guys, research your ancestors, research their practices, and that's the thing that's going to guide us against colonialism. All of these practices that we practice are ways to combat colonialism. This is the way that you're going to be set free from this web that we've been entrapped in, that are even our parents and their parents have been entrapped with for so many decades, is our spiritual systems.
Yep.
So when you sit here and you're going to put a finger and you're going to say, oh, I don't agree with this system, then you yourself are acting in a brainwashed manner, that you acting in a colonized way. And that's what I'm trying to explain to people. Like, listen, these are the systems that are going to combat this beast called colonialism.
Yes. Amen. Seriously. Coming back to your roots. That's what it's all about. Because we've made it this far, and we're going to continue to make it.
And it's going to keep getting better and better.
That's it. My brother, thank you so much. You guys, thank you so much. Have a happy Father's Day. Have a happy summer solstice this weekend.
Yes.
All the good things this weekend is happening. Yes. So enjoy it. Thank your spirits. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. Blessings, everybody.
Bye, everyone.